Alrighty then, here we go again. This morning, I feel like I've got a pretty legit topic to talk to you all about, which is becoming the challenge of these daily videos is finding something to talk about and like something productive, because I can just kind of rant and rave for the entirety of my 20-minute drive, but if it's not a productive conversation, then I feel like people have no reason to tune in. But so I've been trying to watch productive videos when I wake up to inspire me to talk about stuff when I drive to work. And so long as I can kind of keep that going, hopefully I can have more meaningful conversations with you all. This morning, I was watching a video about media consumption, and the gentleman who was talking about his thoughts on media consumption, his thoughts and my thoughts aligned, and that's always a good feeling when you're watching a video and the person with whom the video is hosted by aligns with your video or with your views, because it makes you feel validated, and a lot of us put quite a bit of credit into feeling validated. So what I'm hoping to have happen is to kind of discuss that and see where we can go with there. So basically, as creators, there's a fine balance between product consumption and product creation. And it's a balance that a lot of people, hey, there's me on the billboard. I can see it as I drive up on it. And so that's every morning now that I've come to work, I have seen it on the billboard. Anyway, the hope here is that you can find a balance between media consumption and media creation. And there's popular advice out there. You really, as a creative, need to be able to navigate advice yourself and figure out what advice is good and what advice is bad. But as a creative, I hear a lot of people saying, like, I myself am a writer. I write books. That's what I do. I write other things and I try to create other things, but books are the meat and potatoes of what I create. And a lot of times I hear advice from other writers who talk about that, like, reading is writing or writing is reading. And so essentially what they're saying is that you should read just as much as you write. And I personally find that advice to be kind of garbage, because if you're most anybody has a limited amount of time allotted to them to do the things that they want to do with their day. And so, like, the average person would spend probably 8 hours sleeping, and then another 8 hours working, and then 8 hours to themselves. But as we all know, the 8 hours to yourself is not oftentimes entirely yours. You have to spend at least a decent amount of time traveling to and from work. So that's, for me, that's 40 minutes of my free time right then and there that is dedicated just to traveling. So I take that as an hour out of my time, and now I'm left with 7 hours. And then honestly, by the time I get home and everything, and I usually get home later than I should get home. And so essentially what it comes down to is, like, I don't have 8 hours to myself. And so let's say, I think I average about 5. On a daily basis, I average about 5 hours to myself, and I divvy that up by task. But if consumption is to be the same amount as creation, then you're going to cut your creation time in half. So me, and I consider myself to be a very productive individual, I allow myself at least an hour a day to put towards my writing and my works in that way. And if I then have to split that between reading, I then only have 30 minutes to write and 30 minutes to read. And ever since I have stepped more heavily into the creators market, I have stepped very heavily out of the consumers market. And I, at least personally, feel like that is an important step to make to try and start getting out of the rat race of consumption and hopefully creating your own rat race that revolves more heavily around creation. And because the big thing that I run into, aside from the time, is like, it's nice to consume media for inspiration, and sometimes you need to take a break from the creation and just consume other people's stuff. But if you consume too much of it, you become that's like the soul of what you're doing. And so it's a balance, but it is an imbalance. Like, in the 5 hours that I have when I get home, I usually spend the first hour immediately after work doing some sort of writing project, because I know that I'm not going to fall asleep or get distracted immediately after having come home from work. After that, I spend my next hour dealing with dinner. Usually we'll watch an episode of some TV show at dinner, and that is usually enough to keep my creative mind motivated, that I don't have to go out and crave more TV or anything like that. And then in the perfect world, the third hour is dedicated to fitness of some sorts, working out, stretching, jogging, running, whatever. And then the fourth hour, by that time it's about 7 o'clock, I dedicate that hour to my social interactions. And so, like, that's the weird thing that helps make this reading is writing thing feel like legitimate advice, is because, like, reading has the illusion of being a more quality hobby than, say, gaming or watching TV. And I'm not going to sit here and say that any hobby is better than the other hobby. You enjoy what you enjoy. But, like, for me personally, I need some sort of social interactions to keep me from going insane. And the social interactions that I choose are gaming. I intertwine the unwinding of the activity that is gaming with the social aspect of gaming to basically get two birds with one stone. Because anymore, if I don't have friends online, I'm not even going to play a game. And if I am playing a game, I'm not going to play the game alone. And so usually around 7 o'clock or so, I'll get on Xbox and see who's available and play about an hour with them before I get off to go do whatever I'm going to do in my last hour of my day. Now, my last hour of my day varies. I like to dedicate it to chores so that I can keep the house clean, but that's the hour that more often than not gets abandoned, and it either gets consumed by another hour of social gaming time or it gets consumed by another hour of writing time, both of which I see to be productive uses of my time, especially the writing one, because then I get double the writing time per day. And so technically I could dedicate that last hour to consumption of some sorts, but it, like I said, you just really have to watch the advice that you adhere to, and you don't want to, because the mass majority of people just consume art. There is a good chunk of people who are out there creating, but the creators are always outnumbered by the consumers, or at least that's the balance that we really need to make sure that we're adhering to, because if the creators ever exceed the consumers, then we create an upside down market where there's more people fighting to create something than there are people clamoring to consume something. And I think that is interesting in that I feel like I feel like there's always been a lot of creators in the world, but I also feel like social media has really brought the creators to the forefront. And there's, I'm sure, at least tens of millions of creators across these platforms now. And so it feels more accessible than ever to be a creator. And then now you have to find your own kind of isolated population of consumers and adhere to them. But what a lot of creatives are starting to do now is they're starting to appeal to other creators, essentially. So like this local script guy that I watched on YouTube that inspired this whole video, he has programs where he works with and helps other writers kind of establish their work. And I am a sucker for having fallen into this a couple of times now, where I pay for these people's services, and the first time it happened, it felt like very expensive editorial services. And I've now hit up this scriptwriter guy to see what he has to offer, and it's a working thing, because I am a creative and I consider myself very capable and professional in my creativity and what I'm creating. And so to reach out to these people for advice or validation is probably more so what I'm wanting. Is it a giant waste of my money? I don't know, but it's also paying into their business strategy, because they are a professional creative who, instead of creating content to be consumed, they create content to be consumed by other creators. And so they're leveraging the influx of creativity in this world with their own skill set. And validity is the biggest roadblock that I face, in that I don't have a large fan base that pays any attention to me one way or the other. And because of that, I am unable to leverage myself in any one particular direction. And so I'm more susceptible to these creators, because honestly my hope is that I would work with a creator like this who has hundreds of thousands of followers, and then they would be impacted enough upon my work to somehow help me succeed, help me leverage your audience to succeed. And most people aren't out in this world to help the other person out. But then again, someone who is established enough might have enough of an incline or interest in helping out someone else. And so that's been the hope, is that I can work with these people, I can become a testimonial of their work, and as such they can become a testimonial of my own work. And it's interesting, it has not worked the two times that I've tried it before. And so the other person, he does have testimonials. He used to do testimonial videos with people that he worked with. And I was like, well, if nothing else, I'll get seen by the thousands of people that watch his videos, and that'll get me some good exposure. But he didn't wind up doing a testimonial with me after we worked together, which was really unfortunate. So hopefully me and this other guy can work together, and we can start to maybe have a mutually beneficial relationship, if you will. It's interesting to me to try and figure out like what I would be able to provide with someone like that. Like, not having an audience in this modern social media driven market is a pretty major setback. And so I'm hoping to gain an audience off of this guy, and the best I can do is to hope that he is just interested enough in me as a person and in as my work that he will help me leverage his audience to boost my own. And that could be great, that could be awful, or he could just be like, yeah, I don't need you, random guy, to help me boost my audience. And so we'll see what happens. Work with the dude, see how it goes, maybe engage in his content some more, and follow him on Patreon or something, and then maybe get to a point where he kind of helps me get somewhere, because I don't know, there's so many different strategies for social media growth, but like I feel like testimonials go a long way, in that I've only ever had a couple of posts where I made a post about a bigger account, and then the bigger account recognized my post, and then my post blew up because of it. And I think that is one of the few social media growth strategies that actually makes sense to me. And so when I see it, I'm like, oh, that makes sense, because people like this guy, and this guy said that he liked this guy, then now this person's starting to blow up. And so, I don't know. I might start to follow this guy a little more closely, try and engage in his content, be a customer of his, and hope that he can, in turn, help my own growth. I emailed him this morning asking if he worked with authors, because I feel like there is good character conversations that can happen between he and I, especially for my current piece of literary fiction with my brother Kanan, and seeing from there kind of where things go. And maybe they won't go very far, maybe they will. Maybe I can sponsor a video of his after we've worked together for a while and be like, hey, I want to pay you to sponsor this video. Can you drive some sales? I'm sorry, dude, but I didn't realize you were going to turn until it was too late. So at any rate, yeah, maybe that's a growth strategy that I can use. There is so many different ways to go about growing and succeeding in this world that to leverage only one is foolish, and it costs money to make money. So hopefully working with this guy will get me somewhere. I hit up a different individual too and was like, hey, social media growth, I'm trying it, it's not working, what can you do for me? So hopefully I can hear back from some of these guys and they can help me, and I can leverage their audience and be like, yo, I worked with this guy and it was a good time, and now we're going to be best friends forever or whatever. But yeah, this started out as a conversation about media consumption, and I think that is an important takeaway from this conversation, is that you do not need to consume equal parts in which you create. In fact, I would highly encourage you consume less than you create, especially if you're passionate about your creations. Like, you will never create a full-length anything if you spend half your time consuming. And because the problem is, for a creative, at least for me, consumption is a way for me to find inspiration. And so if I'm consuming just as much as I'm creating, it means I'm finding just as much inspiration or more than I am creating. And you run the risk of trying to create something that encompasses all of your inspiration, or you run the risk of getting distracted by all your inspiration and bouncing all over the place, neither of which are ideal outcomes. So you have to find the healthy balance for yourself. And I personally would suggest less consumption and more creation. That has been the first drive in. We'll see what I have to say to you guys when I get off work today.